Good morning. This is a Sichah in Chelik Chof Beis, second Sichah part of the Likkutei Sichos, page 122. Even Pesach, Kolel Pashas Meides, regarding the psukim near the end that deals with the Meides, with the festivals in our parsha. There says, Daber Abnei Yisrael Emor. Hashem says, speak to the Yidden, saying, on the 15th day of the 7th month, in other words, Tishrei, the Pesach says, speak to the Yidden, saying on the 15th day of the 7th month. What is the 15th day? It is the festival of Sukkot. How long is the festival for? 7 days for Hashem. So, state in Teres Kainim, it says in Teres Kainim, which this is the Medrash, says, Ma Talmud Lemer. What does the pasuk come to teach us? This pasuk of Dabra of Neisrael Lemer, V'chamisha Asiyim V'chedesh Hashvi Hazeh, Chagas Sukkos Shiva Samim. Hashem, what does it come to teach us? So the Teres Kainim says this: the Fish and Emor. So, since it also says in our parsha, so the first pasuk that we spoke about, Dabra of Neisrael Lemer, that's Perachov Gimel, pasuk Lamed Daled. It says Lefish and Emor. Since it says in the same parak, but pasuk Mem Beis, a few psukim after, it says Basukas Teishu Shishvas Yamim. But Torah says that you shall live in a sukkah for 7 days. So Ve'eni Yidea Im Shiva Rishonim Im Shiva Achainim. Now, what the Torah says, I have one pasuk that says on the 15th day, Chag HaSukkos Shivas Yamim Hashem, you should have 7 days of sukkahs. And then a few psukim later, it says that you shall live in Sukkot for 7 days. So I don't know whether this refers to the first 7 days or the last 7 days. So he says, so when the Torah says on the 15th day of the 7th month is the festival of Sukkot, 7 days for Hashem, so you must say that it means the first 7 days and not the last 7 days. So that's what the Teres Kainim says. What this means, it's very ambiguous. It's very not clear. But that's what the Teres Kainim says. But I have two psukim. The first pasuk says, "Dabra b'nei Yisrael that you should start the festival for 7 days of Sukkot for Hashem." And then a few psukim later it says that you should sit on the sukkah for 7 days. So does that mean including the first 7 days, or is an additional 7 days? So that's why when it says that means first 7 days. Now what does that mean? So he says like this. On the first shot, so some commentaries understand the Teres Kainim as follows. As the Shadav in Teres Kainim Matam Lemer Choli is, what's the question? Matam Lemer. V'avosh state in dem pasuk Eloshen Chag HaSukkos. Why does the Torah say that on the 15th day of the 7th month, Chag HaSukkos? Ibalas in the psukim state blaze tertzivei von Mikra Kodesh Kol Melechas Avodah Leisasu and Karbonos HaChag. Now, he says, what's the question? What does it mean to Matam Lemer? So this refers, why this pasuk refers to the Yom Tov as the festival of Sukkot, even though the Torah only records that it's calling a holiness. You shall not do any work. And in Karbonos HaChag, when the tzibur if yeshiva b'sukkah state später b'sefer parsha, and the commandment of sitting in a sukkah says later on in the parsha, Hadag gedar stein chag shivas yomim ondem vardal sukkos. Here we're not talking about. Here, if you look in the pasuk in the parak of Gimel pasuk Lamed Daled, we're not talking about psukim of sukkos. We're talking about Karbonis. So that's what's bothering the Medrash. What does this pasuk come to teach us? Of Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'chamish shosrim l'chedesh Shvi Hazeh Chag HaSukkos. So, in other words, why does the Torah say Chag HaSukkos? Even though the Torah only records that it's a Yom Tif, shouldn't do any work, and lists the Karbonos of Chag. Only later, at the end of the section, is the mitzvah to live in a sukkah recorded. So why doesn't our pasuk say just Chag HaSukkos without adding, Chag Shivas Yomim without adding sukkahs? That's the question. In other words, just to explain a little bit better, that the Torah is speaking about that what you should do on the 15th of the month. For 7 days you should bring karbonos. It doesn't speak about sukkahs. It just says what you should do on the 7th month, the 15th of the 7th month. Not speaking about sukkahs. And in fact, when it comes to Pesach, or when it comes to Shavuos, the Torah, when the Torah speaks about the karbonos, it doesn't say any implication of matzahs or Pesach. So the question is, why does it say by Sukkos the word Chag HaSukkos? That's what's bothering the Teres Kenim. So it says, if them is the Teres Kenim Masber, so therefore the Teres Kenim answers Lefishin Emor. Since the pasuk says, what does that mean? Yeh says the pasuk Besukkos Teishu Shivas Yom. Steht zum Seif Parsha noch dem, wie steht free in pasuk Hamishos Yom Achedes Shvi. Gamer Tachegos Chag Hashem Shivas Yomim. Since the pasuk it says you shall live in the sukkahs for 7 days. And where does that say? At the end of the section, after the pasuk that says on the 15th of the 7th month, you shall celebrate Hashem's festival for 7 days. Make the Zelba Zayin Yomim for the Chag Shivas Tishenim onebnik von Tezva B'Chidish. Again, welke the pasuk that's clear. Other as the Zayin Yomim von Yeshiva B'Sukkah. Aber komm besonder nach dem Chag Hashem Shivas Yomim Shivas Acharon onebnik von dem Tag Zayin nach die Zayin Yomim. So therefore, what does the Torah Kenim say? We're going to be confused. Does the pasuk you shall live in sukkahs for 7 days refer to the same 7 days of the festival period? In other words, the first 7 days from the 15th of the month, spoken about the previous pasuk, or does the pasuk mean the 7 days of living in the sukkah that are to be commemorated after Hashem's festival for 7 days? In other words, it's the 14th day Yom Tov. The Riber steht gleich Maschal Zabarsha. So therefore, what does it say at the beginning of this section? But it's Megala, the Sukkah stage of Shivas Yomim, and as man von Zayin Yemei HaChag, was hebt sich on b'chamisha yom b'chidush. Therefore, at the beginning of the section, it says on the 15th day of the 7th month is the festival of Sukkot, 7 days. The Torah therefore discloses that the command to live in the Sukkot for 7 days coincides with the 7-day Yom Tov on the 15th of the month. In other words, why does it have to say the word Sukkot? Because if it wouldn't say the word Sukkot, I would think that there's 7 days of Sukkot, meaning 7 days of Yom Tov, holiday of do work, kids bring kavanas, etc. And then you have another 7 days they have to sit in the sukkah. Therefore, Tana is telling us over here in the beginning that here we're talking about the sukkahs. And when Tana says later on about sitting in the sukkahs, I say, okay, sukkahs and sukkahs is the same thing, and therefore, while we're not doing any work and bring kavanas, there's also a mitzvah to sit in the sukkah. Okay, base. From Pashas Adrasha and Teres Kenim, Kovdeis L'Chayra, based on the simple understanding of Teres Kenim, it comes out as the mitzvah b'sulas teish for Shuvas Yomim is nit verboten mit der Etzem HaChag, mit the Ibereke in Yonim Shuvachag. So what comes out that the obligation, you shall live in sukkahs for 7 days, it's not associated with the Yom Tov itself, or with the Yom Tov, or let's say the festival's other elements mentioned later in the first pasuk of this section. In the Mershtam Zukim Yom Rishon Mikra Kedesh, Today it says, on the first day, it is a calling of holiness, you shall not do any work of labor. For 7 days you shall offer a carbon to Hashem. And then you can eat with their mitzvah from the dollar minute. And also the mitzvah would come out that the mitzvah of staying in the sukkah is not connected with the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrei. But the Torah forbid does mit Chag, which the Torah connects that with the holiday. So the far is the Havamina, as Besukkah's Teish Rishivas Yavim, is the Tizabazman from Chag, the mitzvah is now. Therefore, that's why the Torah's Kenim had a assumption or a Havamina to think that sitting in a sukkah and the mitzvah of sukkahs is not connected. The Torah lost nor Hedden, so but the Torah just tells me mitzugem in the word hasukis by adding the word hasukis as the pale in the Chag hasukis in the zman shivas yom Hashem v'achal haypizif on b'chamisha sirim achedesh hashvi. So therefore, based on the Torah's Kenim's learning of Chag hasukis, it comes out that the 7 days of sitting in the sukkah is l'poyel on the 15th day of the 7th month. Okay, so the Rebbe says like this. We can't need learning. The Rebbe says this solution it's not a correct approach. Warum? Von dem Gufa, was die Teda is Media, dem Zman von Basukas Teishvu, nur durch ein anderer Eifen. Durch dem was die Shivas Yom Hashem rufen sie on Chag HaSukkos. So by based on the, as he said, that it's from the fact that the Torah tells us when to observe the command that you shall live in the Sukkos. The Torah does so by referring to the 7 days for Hashem as the Yom Tov of Sukkos, is moving. As the mitzvah when Yeshiva with Sukkos is not blaze chal in the zman from the Chag. Not only the mitzvah of sitting in the Sukkah is at the same time of the Chag, nor as zi hat hashayches or a farbunden mit den etzem Chag in Yonif. Rather, you must say the Sukkos, sitting in the Sukkah, has a connection with the essence part of the holiday. Noch more so. Ibald das is their shame for Chag and Moed. Obviously, what are we calling it? We're calling it the holiday of Sukkos. It's understood as das is, we by yet and shame, was an im zok sifareis and teshum yanachag. So you must say that when you say the Yom Tov of Sukkos, understandably, like all names, this name captures the central theme of Sukkos. The Rebbe says like this, page 124. The Fiza darf in Ober verstehen. The Rebbe says, however, we have to understand, Aleph. For most Tzivay Besukkos Teish V'Shivas Yomim is impossible in talk in Hadgosha. I feel in the Dorch laws and blaze Besukkos Teish V'Shivas HaYomim. As man soll wissen, as das seien die sieben Tag, the Chag HaEmor in the Fiza. When the Torah records the mitzvah, you shall live in the sukkah for 7 days. Why doesn't it make it a point, if only by saying you shall live in the sukkahs during the 7 days, letting us know that these 7 days are the 7 days of the Yom Tov mentioned earlier. Days? Yeah, correct. So, right, exactly. The Hayom and that, but it's not right. Right, exactly. The Sukkot Teish Shivasam is a pasuk. It's the same parak, a pasuk man base. So instead of us getting confused and making all these little words, just say Besukkos Teishu B'Shivas Hayom that we're referring to in pasuk Lamadalet. Yeah. And base, was steht nicht gleich betchilas aparsha mentions zum Chamisha Yom Chedesh Shvir Azeh Chag LaSukkos. Why not just say that what the Torah speaks about for 7 days, you should celebrate Sukkot? So say clearly, Shivas Yom Teishu Sukkot right afterwards, that for 7 days, you should stand in Sukkot. Fradas Azeh states for you in Pesach by the Mershon Nachag, especially when it speaks about Pesach, the Torah does say that. Perach of Gimel, the same Perach, Pesach Vav, the Torah says, Bechamisha Yom Chedesh Azeh Chag Amatzah Hashem. Now what does it say? Shivas Yom Matzah Tejelo. Speaks about the mitzvah of matzah, and then it says you should eat matzah for 7 days. And then afterwards it speaks about how you know how to work, and how it's holy, and you have to bring karbanos for 7 days. So obviously there's something very unique about Sukkot over here, that the Torah approaches it very differently. Okay, Gimel. Wenn wir das verstehen, merkt man, als Bonnen dem Scheiches auf die Nigle zwischen Mitzvah Sukkah und Mitzvah Netilas Lulav. We'll understand this by clarifying the connection, at least on the Pashtab Shat, between the Mitzvah Sukkah and the Mitzvah of Lulav. Das Chot das Eigen Netilas Lulav wird in der Parsha abgeteilt von Chag HaSukkos, verbindet aber die Teile mit dem Chag Hashem, nicht wie Sukkah. Now, you're right that in this section, the Mitzvah of Lulav is also treated separately from the Mitzvah of Sukkot. However, the Torah links the Mitzvah of Lulav by saying a Yom Tov for Hashem for 7 days, unlike the Mitzvah of Sukkot as explained above. The Alter Rebbe Zog B'Sidurei, as Mitzvahs Netilas for Lulav, Sukkah, he a Mitzvah and a Mufar. The Alter Rebbe writes in Siddur, taking the Lulav specifically in the Sukkah, this is like the optimal Mitzvah, the optimal way to fulfill the Mitzvah of Lulav. The Chin is thus an Inyan versus Al Pi Kabbalah. The marker from them is in Kisvei Arizal. Now, this that the Alter Rebbe says about the mitzvah, the source is in Kabbalah, in the writings of the Arizal. B'shleim as Azei v'al Inyanim on Kabbalah and Primus Atera. Hateich thus a marker as man Nila. Everything that's Kabbalah Primus has a explanation according to Nila. Frat as the Alter Rebbe is Mishana from Moshe was stated in Kisvei Arizal. Tev the one of Kolel Ketzerza. Or schreibt Mitzvah and Mocher. And especially the Alter Rebbe, who the source is Kisvei Arizal, Arizal writes Tev the one in the Sukkah. And what does the Alter Rebbe do? The Alter Rebbe changes and says Mitzvah and Mocher, the optimal way to fulfill the Mitzvah of Lulav is Nafke in the Sukkah. Dalit. The Cheder wollten wir gekannt sagen, als das was Netilas Lulav besucht ist Mitzvah und Mocher, is Mitzvah the Mitzvah Sukkah. So, Bashkof Rishon, at first glance, you could say that the mitzvah of taking the lulav and the sukkah to fulfill the mitzvah in the optimal way, mitzvah and mufcher, is part and parcel of the mitzvah of sukkah. Yeh says the mitzvah of sukkah is teishvu kein taduro, since the mitzvah of sukkah is that one has to sit in the sukkah or reside in the sukkah the way, or sit in the sukkah the way he lives. The whole. Yes, the mitzvah is teishvu kein taduro. The what? She oichel v'sheser v'yoshin v'yitayil v'dor b'sukkah kol zayin yayamin ben bayayim ben belayla kedel shudor v'beisei. The Gemara says in the Sukkah, it's brought down to the Rambam and Alter Rebbe and Shulchan Aruch, that what does it mean that your living should resemble the way you reside in your home? So Alter Rebbe says a person should eat, drink, sleep, relax, and live in the Sukkah for all 7 days, both by night and by day, in the same manner that he resides at his home. Any activity that a person would not do outside at home should not be done outside of Sukkah. So it says, Noitik atam v'heter, so Megan learning chuli chutz Sukkah. And to learn Torah outside the Sukkah, a person needs a svara and like a dispensation. Und doch is doch von dem moving bepashta, so it's understood simply, as eigentlich Netilas Lulav, was is von Inyanim, was der Mensch tut mesher the Yemei HaSukkos. So, from this is understood, let's say the taking of the Lulav, which we do, mesher the days of Sukkos, Avzai b'Sichah Sukkah, has to be in the Sukkah, frat as mitzvah se'ashavi, as those had their fire kvias. Madach Hatzil Kitzvah Zayin HaSukkah, the Kol Shekin, was Netilas Lulav Dav Zayin HaSukkah. So, by taking the Lulav, it becomes part of the person's routine on Sukkah. So if we're saying about relaxing and everything has to be carried out in the Sukkah, so surely the mitzvah of Lulav must be performed in the Sukkah. For them, aber, was der Alte Rebbe schreibt, dem Ingen Anal zwischen die Dini in Kirstolov, und ich von sein Loschen Mitzvahs, den Tilose, bis Sukkah, in Mitzvah am Bofar, was ist Mudrisch der Ingen von Kirstolov, ist Muchach, as meint nicht als a Din Sukkah, no, a Din Mitzvah am Bofar, Mitzvah in Kirstolov. So, the Rebbe is saying is Midayik, the fact that the Rebbe wrote this idea of taking the Dal Minim, and also his wording, the Mitzvah is taking it in the Sukkah, is the optimal way to fulfill the mitzvah, emphasizing the idea of taking the lulav. This proves that he considers it to be not a halacha of sukkah, or rather a halacha concerning the mitzvah lulav, and the best way to fulfill mitzvah's lulav. Now, what does that mean? So the Rebbe says like this: zwischen die zwei Hasbaras is reich an afkamin lepeo. Also, the different ways you look at it, it's going to be an afkamin and a halacha. In fall, when is potem na sukkah. B'shas did das ageshem geht zu zen, was am start potem na sukkah. Now, what comes out, let's say a scenario where a person would be exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah. For example, when it rains, or let's say so forth, but the halacha says that someone who's a mitzvah distressed, he's potem from sukkah. Even if this a little bit sukkah is blaze, I'm mitzvah and I'm in mitzvah sukkah, so. If the mitzvah of taking a lulav in a sukkah is just it's an optimal way of the mitzvah, for example, like everything else, you eat and you drink, so the best thing is that the mitzvah of lulav should be in the sukkah. His base air is part of a sukkah, so it is so when it comes out, that when there's rain, and now he's potter from the sukkah because of the rain, is the regen vet oiferen. So it comes out that since it's only mitzvah and amufcher, so he doesn't have to wait till the rain stops to be mekayim the mitzvah. Yibal as it's yes hotter nit oif zich ken chiv yeshiva v'sukkah. Since now it's raining and there's no obligation for this in the sukkah, punkt wir darfet warten mit seiner chilish geht zu mit der geshem. That's uferen. So when a person wants to eat and drink and it's raining, so he doesn't have to go in the sukkah. Why? Because I'm stars potem na sukkah. So he doesn't have to wait till the rain stops in order to eat, or in order to be mekayim the mitzvah of lulav. Aber oib das is oich a mitzvah na mufkar in netilas lulav. Now that's all if you say it's a mitzvah na mufkar part of the sukkah. So a mitzvah is poter na sukkah, just like eating and drinking, so you don't have to wait. But if you say it's a din, not part of the mitzvah of sukkah, but it's a din in lulav, that part of the mitzvah of lulav in mekayim is that it should be done in the sukkah, is ava pias oif im is jetzt. Basically, this suggestion talking about mitzvah sukkah. Ibal there is mechuyim in tilas lulav. Was die shleimus von der mitzvah von amucher is when sie wird getan on sukkah. But if you say that it's a mitzvah in the lulav, it's not a din in the sukkah. It's a mitzvah in the actual lulav. So it comes out that you're right. That the halacha is telling you, mitzad, amitztar, you don't have to sit in the sukkah. But it's not, it has nothing to do with the sukkah, it has to do with the lulav. Mitzvah and amufkar of the lulav is that it should be in the sukkah. The stabras as is min amufkar to vartin, is that again, but ufer, kedei to mekayim the mitzvahs and the tilas of the sukkah, was the mitzvah min amufkar. So therefore, it makes a lot of sense that since it's a mitzvah in the actual lulav, and the best way of performing this mitzvah is in the sukkah, it makes a lot of sense. Ideally, a person should wait for the rain to subside to fulfill the mitzvah of taking it in the sukkah, which is minam bofcher. Okay, hey. So that episode is the beer, but the explanation is as follows. In Pashas Amedes gefidmin nar zwei Yom Tevim, was bei sie wird der Chag batzeichen mit dem Hashem HaMiyuchot. Chag HaMatzis und Chag HaSukkos. Und es ist eine Dach, Chiluk in Beneim. Regarding the Yom Tevim, in our parsha, in the section dealing with the Yom Tevim, only 2 Yom Tevim are given a distinct name. This is the Chag HaMatzis, the festival of Matzis, and the festival of Sukkos. The Rebbe says, there's a difference between them. Aleph. By Chag HaMatzah state, B'chamisha Asuyim Mechedesh Aseh, Chag HaMatzis LaHashem. The Shem Chag HaMatzah state, Nit B'Shag Ala Zibin Teg. Now, when it comes to the festival of matzahs, the Torah says, on the 15th day of this month, the festival of matzahs for Hashem. Which means the Yom Tov's name, which is Chag HaMatzahs, is not connected to all 7 days. By Chag HaSukkos state, Chag HaSukkos, Shivas Yomim LaHashem. In the holiday of Sukkot, the Torah says, the festival of Sukkot, 7 days for Hashem. So that's one difference. One difference is when it says Chag HaMatzahs, it doesn't say anything about the 7 days. And when it says about Chag HaSukkos, it says Shivas Yomim LaHashem. Base. L'idach, however, on the other hand, by Chag HaMatzahs is the pasuk like Mamshech Lozog, Shivas Yomim Matzahs Tichilu. However, when it comes to the Yom Tov of Matzahs, Torah says immediately, you shall eat matzahs for 7 days. By Chag HaSukkos wird das gesagt, bei Sukkos Teish Shivas Yomim nit besmichus LaHashem, ich b'sefer Parsha. However, when it comes to the festival of Sukkot, the mitzvah you shall live in Sukkot for 7 days is not recorded in proximity to the name of Sukkot, but rather at the end of the section. Now, why is that? Shleimar, as the Asbara from the Chilukim came in uplearning von noch an Unterschied, was mir gefindt zwischen die zwei Chagim. So, we could understand this by first clarifying another difference between these two Yom Tovim. Chag HaMatzahs wird b'loshel Chazal und Eich in dem Loschen Hamurgel b'minig Yisrael b'loshel Bnei Adam angerufen Eich mit einem anderen Namen Chag HaPesach. So Chag HaMatzahs, as we know, it's also called, the Torah calls it, we also call it Chag HaPesach, or the B'loshel Bnei Adam, as we call it Chag HaPesach. Schenken bei Chag HaSukkos gefällt mir nicht, als man soll anrufen mit einem anderen Namen. However, Sukkos is called Sukkos, we don't call it other names. I read mit demselben Namen, angerufen if you remember the other Sichah we learned, right? The Pesach has 3 names. It's called Chag HaMatzahs, Zman Cheresenu, and Chag HaPesach. 3 different names that everyone wanted to hold beer, and Avodah, the difference between all 3. However, when it comes to Sukkot, the Torah calls it one name, and even in Yisrael we call it Sukkot. Now, the Rebbe says this, Mikol Anal is verstandig. So, from all of this is understood, as a Teichen von dem ganzen Chag HaPesach besteht nicht im Ganzen in dem, was ist Chag HaMatzahs. Schenken bei Chag HaSukkos ist das Sukkos der Likkutei Sichos. Now, the Torah, so it comes like this, that the theme of Pesach is not only about the matzahs. Schenken in Sukkos, the theme is, of the Chag is Chag HaSukkos. On the Rebbe says, therefore, Shas di Teda, Zog b'chamisha Asuyim Mechedesh Aseh, Chag HaMatzahs LaHashem. Therefore, when it comes to Pesach, the Teda says on the 15th, should be Chag HaMatzahs, Taish the pasuk gleich up, therefore the Teda says what? Shivas Yomim Matzahs Teichlu. You should eat matzahs for 7 days. As nor to leave them, prat with the Chilas Matzah, with the Angur of Chag HaMatzahs, nit val, das ist der Teichen, Achag, and alle Shivas Yomim Shabbai. It's only because of this reason, after 7 days you should eat matzahs. The Torah says this, that Shivas Yom matzahs Teichlu. Shegem b'chamisha Asuyim L'chedesh Hashvi is Chag HaSukkos Shivas Yom LaHashem. This is the Teichen, the Chag for Shivas Yom. Therefore, Mashegem, when it comes to Sukkos, what does it say? Chag HaSukkos Shivas Yom LaHashem, because the theme of Sukkos is Sukkos. Tam Sakuva steht nicht der Tzivoi. Sukkos Teichen Shivas Yom gleich noch Chag HaSukkos. That's why it doesn't say by Sukkos right away, Sukkos Teichen Shivas Yomim. But them old wollten man gemeint, as bei Chag HaMatzahs, wie bei Chag HaMatzahs, as it read Angur of Chag HaSukkos, because I would think that the only reason why you call Chag HaMatzahs is because you have to sit there. But now that the theme of Sukkos is the Sukkah. All right, we'll continue tomorrow.